Welcome to Roll for Crit. Today we're previewing RB8, which stands for Retro Baseball 8-Bit, because it is a baseball game inspired by classic NES-style baseball games of days of old, and it's on Kickstarter right now.
The way this game basically works is pretty much skill checks against each other, you rolling dice. You'll set up your team like so, and you'll have a pitcher out going against their batter. You'll compare their stats, and if one is higher than the other, you get to add that to the dice roll, so they'll have a bit of an advantage. So if we rolled, and we both rolled, let's say, 7s, if my pitcher had a higher value by like 2 points, I'd add it to the roll, and therefore I'd win. However, the batter may still hit the ball, because you will then roll these dice. Pretty much the die has a more advantage to whoever won that roll. So if I rolled because the pitcher won, the batter actually still hit the ball. So then whoever wins that is going to roll to the 2 dice again to compare them to a key here for if the hitter hits the ball or if the pitcher has the advantage. And they'll tell you what happens, whether the ball is a home run, whether it was a strike, or whether it went to left or right field. Mm-hmm. So that's basically how a lot of this game is going to play out.
Yeah, if you're familiar with the actual rules of baseball, it follows right along those lines. You can see over here you've got a little scoreboard keeping track of your strikes and outs and, your runs. That's another very important thing, the actual score of the game. And you actually go around the base. Like you said, it'll tell you if it's a double, triple, home run, whatever. One of the big kind of wrinkles to the game is these rally cards, which both players have access to, and they will tell you to play them at different times, and they have different effects. For example, I've got a rain delay, which forces your opponent to discard one of their cards.
Right, and I have one that's brawl, which under one very specific roll for the pitcher where they actually hit the batter with the ball, you will get a permanent bonus for the rest of the game because you went and punched the pitcher.
Yeah, so that can happen. Or maybe a streaker will run by. That's one of our favorites.
That's really your event deck for this. But this game, I think, probably even better than a lot of those old 8-bit games in terms of capturing the rules of baseball, because you can steal a base in which you roll and compare dice like your speed versus their defense. You have different players with abilities. I think we chose this because it's great. Thor, Asgard. They also have great pun names. We've been putting down the hammer for the pitcher, and there's also hitters who maybe are better, who have lower stats, but be great at stealing bases or maybe influence other players at bat. Mm-hmm. And then there's also, like I said, ground ball key, where you can look things up. There's errors. There's getting bunt the ball. It takes a lot of
everything.
Yeah,
it's really quite technical. And if you are someone who really does enjoy baseball and tabletop games, you're gonna find a lot of those terms, those actual technical things, those inside baseball things from baseball. It's definitely streamlined to an extent because it's a lot of dice rolling, but it's not dumbed down or simplified. It doesn't ignore any rules or anything. It really does feel like you're playing and encountering actual baseball simulated through dice. And I think that word simulation is a big part of this. The only really sort of arcadey element, for lack of a better term, is these random rally cards. Whereas the rest, the dice are, not that there's not randomness, but it just feels very true to simulating an actual game of baseball, which is kind of neat.
Speaking of which, that in order to play baseball, you need teams.
You sure do.
And players. The way that we have it set up right now is actually 2 full teams playing against each other. But the game's going to come with a lot of other teams, so you can either draft them out or just go for a point system. So there's plenty of different ways you can play to fit how you think you'd have a lot more fun with it.
Yeah, which is cool, and you have all the cool different designs of the characters that we've talked about that we really like, mixing and matching your favorites, for example. You could also kind of do longer games where maybe you build your team and really have kind of a season-long event. One of the things that I believe is a stretch goal in the Kickstarter right now is a solo mode, so I think that's going to be a really cool thing because I think that makes perfect sense for this kind of a game.
And what's also really cool, going back to how you said simulation, when building these player teams, it's not just, I'm just going to get the players' abilities. You'll have to think, because sometimes a pitcher will get an advantage if they swing left or right. or if they pitch left or right. Like, and the cards will actually show them facing left or right for that.
Right, yeah.
And they will actually face, like, they also have rules for fatigue for the pitcher is in there for too long, or even just moral support if he's been getting too many runs.
Yeah.
So it's amazing all the stuff they've captured in an actual baseball game in here.
They crammed a lot into it, all inside of that 8-bit style, that nostalgic look to it, including a little Nintendo official seal-esque logo on the front of the box. So I think if you're somebody who likes baseball and old school video games, you'll probably get a kick out of this. There's definitely a lot of randomness. It's very much all about dice rolling. So if that's not your scene, you may not like it. But if you like those other things, I think you should give it a look.
Yeah.
Final thoughts?
I was mentioned before, I mean, if it wasn't obvious, you're not going to have actual, like, the New York Yankees or other name teams. However, judging by what I know about many sports games nowadays, you probably have the same result of getting some of those named players in a random pack from an EA video game than will be appearing in this game.
You could be right. And hey, we should point out that the two of us are people who do not follow baseball at all. But we were able to sit down and comprehend most of the rules of this. If you don't, it would probably be helpful to have someone who knows more about baseball to coach you through it. I recommend that for sure. So check it out, RB8. It's on Kickstarter right now. It's Retro Baseball 8-bit. And I'm Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this was Roll for Crit. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome board game content from Roll for Crit.
And please leave a comment. We're lonely.